Amid growing calls for Labor Secretary Alex Acosta's resignation, Senate Democrats are pressing the DOJ for an update on its internal investigation of the sweetheart deal given to Jeffrey Epstein a decade ago. Senator Tim Kaine is leading the call for that accountability, and the Virginia Democrat joins us now. Tim Kaine is a member of the Foreign Relations and Armed Services Committees as well. Senator Kaine, the plea deal that Jeffrey Epstein got, I mean, what more do we need to learn about it? And what needs to happen moving forward in terms of process? Is there any way to hold Alex Acosta accountable?
Well, Mika, I think we need to hold him accountable. When we had the hearing for Alex Acosta before our committee, the Health Committee, in March of 2017, I asked him about this sweetheart deal of a lifetime, and he sort of alternatively defended the deal but claimed he wasn't that involved in the details. Three things have happened since then. His answers were completely unconvincing, and that's why I opposed him. But since that time, the Miami Herald has done an amazing job of digging in to how the deal was put together. Very, very sleazy. Second, a federal judge in Miami ruled that the deal was illegal because the U.S. Attorney's Office, under Acosta's direction, didn't notify the victims. In fact, affirmatively hid the deal from the victims so they wouldn't know about it. And then finally, you've got the new Epstein indictments. So I think with this new information, it's causing Democrats and Republicans to basically rethink the Acosta situation. So members of both parties are pushing on DOJ to complete the analysis of the plea deal. We're counting on the new prosecution in the Southern District of New York to finally give these women the justice that they've been seeking for now more than a decade. And I think that there is increasing pressure on Secretary Acosta to resign. But even if he resigns, we're not going to stop digging into this.
Hey, Senator Kaine, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you this morning. Willie. I want to underline that at that hearing a couple of years ago, you did ask him about this Epstein deal, and then you did vote against him, both to your credit. I want to ask you about your colleagues on the Republican side in the Senate, though. So far, we haven't heard anything from them. You have good relationships with them, just like Claire McCaskill did when she was in the Senate. What do they say about this? Is this a hill they're willing to die on? This man is an accused sex trafficker of girls.
Well, it's interesting. We came back after a week-long recess Monday night. So the Epstein indictments had just come out, and this has been a major discussion in and around this place. As Claire would know, this is the kind of thing everybody's talking about. A couple of the Republicans have come out. Ben Sasse, Susan Collins, and others expressed concern. John Kennedy of Louisiana yesterday expressed deep concern about the plea deal. We got to get to the bottom of it. So you are starting to see Republicans now really have serious questions about what happened. I mean, the outrageous thing about this is the deal was illegal because he didn't tell the victims. It was secret. They hid it from the victims. Right. It was the cushiest deal ever. But the thing that makes me the maddest is this. When Alex Acosta cut a deal allowing Epstein to plead guilty to prostitution charges, these girls were not prostitutes. They were human trafficking victims. And basically allowing him to plead guilty to a prostitution charge was like re-victimizing. Some of these girls were 14-year-old middle schoolers when Epstein was preying upon them. And Acosta letting him plead to a prostitution charge is like pouring salt in the wounds that these young ladies experienced at the time. It looks like they may finally get justice, thank God.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Apparently, I made it sound like it was Acosta. Of course, it was Epstein who's the accused sex trafficker, but it was Acosta who gave him this sweetheart deal. So do you see movement then from your Republicans down the road? Do you think there'll be enough pressure here on the White House that he has to resign?
I think he's going to have to resign. Yesterday, President Trump tweeted out that he felt very badly for Secretary Acosta. I feel very badly for the dozens and dozens of women who were victimized by this guy, not by the prosecutor who cut a sweetheart deal for him.
Hey, Senator Kaine, help me out here. Now, I realize much of the world has just passed me by. But you were just talking about various Republican senators who are deeply concerned, highly troubled about what happened. We're talking about children. We're talking about 14-year-old children being trafficked sexually, being flown to an island in the Caribbean, being flown from New York to Florida. How about a little bit more than just I'm deeply troubled, deeply concerned? What is wrong with this former party called the Republican Party? What is wrong here?
You know, I mean, obviously, no Republican is standing up and being equivocal about Jeffrey Epstein. The guy's a monster. The question is Acosta. And at the time in March of 2017, when I was the only one raising this at the hearing, I was telling my colleagues, folks, there's a big problem here. But for my colleagues, some of them at the time, some of the facts weren't yet clear. Now the facts are clear. The deal was illegal. A court has found that. The Miami Herald has exposed how sleazy it was, and now Epstein is charged again. So I hope this may move some of my colleagues from the wait and see, or we'll let the president decide, into a more active camp. And Michael, here's why it's so important. The Secretary of Labor oversees human trafficking enforcement, human trafficking claims. What victim of trafficking is going to think under Secretary Acosta that they are going to be protected by a Department of Labor when this guy sided with the trafficker against the victims in such an egregious case? You got to move him aside just so you can put somebody in that position who people would have confidence could actually enforce and protect trafficking victims.
Hey, Tim, it's Claire. I just want everyone to know this is not the only example I could cite of Tim Kaine seeing around corners. Tim Kaine has a tendency to look down the line and see what consequences might be, and he did that with Acosta. I didn't, and good on you. I know you got a hearing today on Saudi Arabia arms sales. You know, this is a leader who killed somebody who was working as a journalist in America, murdered him in a foreign embassy, is still on the bestie list of the president. They all love him in the White House. Talk about this, what's going on here in terms of a constitutional crisis as it relates to arms sales to Saudi Arabia, and what this administration is doing that is unprecedented.
Well, Claire, I'm going to really go into this at the hearing today. The number of bizarre steps that this president has taken to protect Saudi Arabia from scrutiny. You know, we repudiate the Saudi war in Yemen, and the president vetoes our repudiation. We stop arms sales after the Khashoggi murder, and the president doesn't end around on us and says that there's a national emergency requiring the arms sales. We're going to get into all of this today. Why does this president feel like he's got to be the guy carrying the briefcase for the Saudi royal family? Compare it with what's going on right now. This president, we're fighting with the UK. The UK ambassador has just resigned. What this president does is he fights with our allies, and then he cozies up to dictators all around the world, and the Saudi example is probably one of the chief examples of that, and we're going to get into it all at the hearing today.
That's great.
All right, Senator Tim Kaine, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Good luck with all of that. And still ahead on Morning Joe, Senator and 2020 candidate Elizabeth Warren has been calling for the breakup of big tech companies. And next week, Capitol Hill is set to hold a hearing on the issue. Our next guest says it's time for lawmakers to get involved, but carefully. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.